Imagine landing in New York City at just 16 years old. You've got no money, no friends, and you don't speak a single lick of English. All you've got is a bag on your shoulder and a feeling that back home in Israel, the ceiling for your success was just too low. That's exactly how Ayal Mahab started. Most people would have looked at him and seen a kid who was destined to struggle, maybe work a basic job just to get by. But Ayal's father saw something else. He knew that in America, if you've got the drive, the sky's the limit. Ayal didn't start in a boardroom. He started in a high school where he couldn't even understand the teachers. He spent his days in biblical studies and Shakespeare classes, probably wondering how to be or not to be was going to help him pay the rent. It's a classic underdog story, but it's the foundation of how a $400 million empire was built. It wasn't about the money he had in his pocket, because he had zero. It was about the mindset he brought with him from across the ocean. So, how do you go from, "Hi, how are you?" to closing multi-million-dollar deals? You don't do it by taking it easy. Ayal had a secret weapon, talk radio. Every single night for 4 hours straight, he would sit in his room and just listen. He'd listen to the hosts, the callers, the way people argued and shared ideas. He would write down words he didn't know, over and over again. He wasn't just learning English, he was learning how Americans think, how they negotiate, and what they value. This wasn't just a language lesson, it was his first masterclass in communication. He knew that if he wanted to play in the big leagues, he had to speak the language of the players. While other kids were out hanging out or sleeping, he was grinding away, turning noise into knowledge. This dedication to the boring work is what separates the dreamers from the doers. He didn't have a tutor or a fancy app. He just had a radio and a burning desire to not be left behind. One of the most powerful things Ayal realized early on is that in his culture, failure isn't an option. He viewed failure almost like death. But here's the twist. He did fail. He tried his hand at a copy shop, then he got into commodities and lost a lot of money. Most people would have packed their bags and said, "Well, I tried," and went back to a 9 to 5. But for Ayal, those losses weren't the end of the story. They were just expensive lessons. He realized that just because you fail at one thing, it doesn't mean you are a failure. It just means you haven't found the right vehicle yet. He moved from New York to Florida because his wife hated the cold, and instead of complaining about starting over, he saw it as the magic moment where everything could change. He took his ego out of the equation and realized that to win big, you have to be willing to lose and get back up. Hey, if you're enjoying this story of turning nothing into an empire, make sure to follow the channel. We've got plenty more secrets from the Treasury to share with you. So Ayal gets his license to sell houses in Boca Raton, right? He's all geared up, thinking this is the big break. But he quickly hits a wall. He tells this hilarious story about going to see a listing for a $2 million house owned by a 90-year-old man. Now, there's nothing wrong with 90-year-olds, but this guy was moving at a snail's pace. He's showing Ayal the garage, then the light switches, taking forever to get through a single room. Ayal's standing there thinking, I need action. I can't spend my whole day watching a guy walk 10 feet. He realized that selling houses was too slow, too emotional, and honestly, the paydays weren't matching the effort he wanted to put in. His wife actually had a friend who gave him the best advice ever. Stop doing residential, do commercial. Why? Because in commercial real estate, you're doing the same amount of work, but instead of a $5,000 commission check, you're looking at $50,000, $75,000, or even $100,000. That was the light bulb moment. He realized that if he was going to work hard anyway, he might as well do it where the rewards were 10 times bigger. Ayal joins this commercial real estate firm in Florida, and the scene is classic. There are about 50 agents in the office. Most of them are just hanging out, drinking coffee, talking about the weather, and basically being lazy. It's that typical office vibe where everyone's waiting for the phone to ring, but nobody's actually making the calls. Ayal looked at that and saw a massive opportunity. He didn't want to be the guy at the water cooler. He wanted to be the guy on the leaderboard. Since there were no cell phones, no YouTube, and no social media back then, you couldn't just post your way to success. You had to actually talk to people. Ayal would stay at the office from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. every single night. While everyone else was home watching TV or having dinner, he was hitting the phones hard. He knew that the only way to beat the lazy majority was to outwork them during the hours they weren't willing to give. It wasn't about being the smartest guy in the room, not yet anyway. It was about being the one who refused to leave until the job was done. Without the internet, how on earth do you find people who want to sell million-dollar buildings? You get creative. Ayal's secret weapon was a local newspaper called the Sun Sentinel. He wouldn't even look at the for sale ads. Instead, he'd go straight to the back of the paper to the classifieds and look for the for rent section. He'd find landlords trying to rent out a one-bedroom apartment for $500, and he'd call them at night. Why at night? Because that's when you could actually catch them at home. He'd tell them, "Hey, I see you're trying to rent this place, but would you be interested in selling the whole building? I think I have a buyer for you." He'd get them to sign a listing agreement right there, telling them that if he got them their price, they'd pay him a commission. He spent his days literally walking door to door, motel to motel, along the Florida coast. He'd show up at his wife's office with water dripping off him from the heat and rain because he'd been boots on the ground all day. He was doing the dirty work that the other 50 agents in his office were too professional or too lazy to do. And guess what? It worked. Within a few years, 9 out of 10 listings on the office board had his name on them. Ayal's Sun Sentinel strategy was all about finding a gap in the market where no one else was looking. Have you ever tried a weird or unconventional way to find a business lead or a job? Tell us your story in the comments. So, Ayal is absolutely crushing it as an agent. He's the top guy in the office 3 years in a row, 1998, 1999, and 2000. His name is all over the walls. One day, this guy walks into the office, sees Ayal's name everywhere, and tells the receptionist, "I want that guy." The receptionist tried to play it cool, saying Ayal was way too busy, but the guy waited 4 hours just to talk to him. When they finally sat down, the guy showed Ayal a bank statement with $2 million in it and asked, "What do you have for me?" Ayal didn't just show him what was on the computer, he showed him the off-market stuff he'd found by knocking on doors. The guy started buying up properties left and right. But here's the kicker. After about a year, this partner told Ayal, "Stop taking your commission checks home. Stop being the middleman. Become a partner. Become a principal." That was the massive shift. He realized that while a $50,000 commission check is nice, the real wealth, the New York money, was in the appreciation. He saw buyers from New York come down, buy a property he found, sight unseen, and flip it for a $2 million profit in the same year. His wife looked at him and said, "Are you kidding me? You want to make 2,000? I want to make 2 million. That's when he stopped working for the check and started working for the equity. Now, don't think for a second that this transition was easy or instant. The first year was brutal. We're talking zero income. He wasn't making those easy commissions anymore because he was focused on bigger, more complex deals. He was literally living off his credit cards, racking up debt just to keep the lights on and the dream alive. It's that terrifying valley of death every entrepreneur faces, where you have to decide if you're going to quit or keep pushing. Ayal kept pushing. He had that fire in the belly we always talk about. And then it finally happened. His first big check after transitioning wasn't for 5 or 10 grand. It was for $255,000. Imagine that. Going from wondering if your credit card will be declined at the grocery store to seeing $250,000 hit your account in one day. That one check validated everything. It proved that his boots-on-the-ground strategy worked and that he belonged in the big leagues. From that point on, everything started falling into place because he finally had the capital to play the game his way. One of the most important things Ayal shares about this journey is something a lot of people struggle with: ego. Even now, as a guy who has closed $400 million deals, he says you have to check your ego at the door. He believes that to get to the next level, you always need to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. He says his goal is to be the stupidest man in the room whenever he's in a meeting with billionaires. If he sits down with someone and realizes within 2 minutes that they're going to be a waste of his time, he's out of there. Why? Because time is the one thing you can never get more of. He learned this the hard way through years of trial and error. He realized that the lone wolf mentality only gets you so far. To build a truly massive empire, you have to be willing to listen, to learn, and to partner up with people who have the skills or the money you don't have yet. It's about humility and hunger, staying humble enough to know you don't know everything, but hungry enough to go find the person who does. Ayal says he wants to be the stupidest person in the room to keep learning. Who is the smartest person you know? And what's the best piece of advice they ever gave you? Let us know in the comments. In the world of real estate, everyone has a magic formula, but Ayal keeps it dead simple with the 1% rule. Here's the deal. If you're buying a property for $2.2 million, you should be bringing in at least $22,000 a month in rent. That's the 1% benchmark. He tells a story about seeing deals in South Florida where a seller wants over $2 million for a 20-unit building, but the total rent is only around $1,300 per door. If you do the math, that's nowhere near the 1% mark. The sellers will try to be cute and tell you, don't worry, the rents will go up to $2,000 eventually. Ayal's response: so you want me to work for free for 2 years just to reach the price you're asking today? No thanks. He's very clear. If you don't follow the math from day one, you're not an investor. You're just someone paying for a very expensive hobby. The 1% rule is his shield against overpaying, and it's what keeps his bank account in the green while others are drowning in potential that never happens. If you've ever looked at a real estate brochure, you've probably seen the term cap rate. It's basically a way to measure the return on an investment, but Ayal warns that this can be a massive trap for new investors. Sellers love to show you a high income and very low expenses, sometimes as low as 30%. They make the deal look like a gold mine on paper, but Ayal knows the truth. You cannot run a massive community of 200 or 300 units with only 30% expenses. Between insurance premiums, taxes, and maintenance, your real expenses are going to be closer to 50%. If you fall for the seller's cute numbers, your profit disappears the second you take over. He does his own underwriting, which is just a fancy word for doing your own homework. He looks at what the property actually costs to run, not what the seller wants him to believe. It's better to walk away from a pretty deal than to sign your name on a disaster. Ayal has a really cool way of looking at a deal before he even signs the contract. He uses the analogy of the Macy's 4th of July fireworks. Do you know what the organizers do on July 5th? They start planning for next year's show. They don't wait. Ayal does the exact same thing with real estate. On day one of owning a building, he's already planning for the refi event or the sale, usually 12 to 24 months down the road. He's not just buying a building to collect rent and sit on his hands. He's looking at how he can increase the value immediately so he can go back to the bank, get a bigger loan based on the new value, and pull his initial money back out. Or he sets it up so the next buyer sees a perfectly running machine and pays him a premium for it. He calls his broker a cowboy because he's willing to put down huge amounts of non-refundable cash, but he only does that because he already knows exactly how he's going to get out before he ever gets in. Ayal says the 1% rule is his secret to never losing money. Do you think that's still possible in today's market, or has the world changed too much? Drop an agree or disagree in the comments and tell us why. A lot of people ask the same question. Should I start small with a duplex or try to raise money for a huge complex? Ayal has a very interesting take on this. He says that in many cases, the numbers on those small 5-unit or 20-unit buildings in hot areas like South Florida just don't work anymore. The sellers are asking for tomorrow's prices today. But when you look at a massive 300-unit or 400-unit deal, the 1% rule actually starts to apply again. Now you might be thinking, I don't have $20 million for a down payment. And that's where the next level thinking comes in. Ayal suggests that instead of buying a small, struggling building all by yourself, you're often better off partnering up. If a huge deal needs a $10 million down payment and you have $1 million, take 10% of that big deal. Why? Because a 300-unit complex is a stable machine with better appreciation and professional systems. It's better to own 10% of a gold mine than 100% of a money pit. For Ayal, real estate isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet, it's an art. When he buys a property, he's looking at it like a blank canvas. He asks, what can I do with this to make it the best in the neighborhood? He doesn't just hire a random company to collect checks. He believes in owner mentality. He wants property managers who actually have skin in the game, meaning they might even have a little equity in the deal. He says that collecting rent isn't property management. That's just being a cashier. Real management is about creating value, finding ways to lower expenses without hurting quality, and making the property so good that it commands the highest rent in its class. When your team feels like they own the place, they don't sit on their ass. They find the leaks, they negotiate with vendors, and they treat every dollar like it's coming out of their own pocket. This is where the real Treasury secrets come out. Ayal talks about the massive difference between using a third-party management company and doing the work yourself. He gives a perfect example. To rehab an apartment unit, a big third-party company might charge you $25,000 per door. They have their own markups, their own contractors, and they aren't exactly looking for the best deal. But because Ayal has his own team and he's boots on the ground, he can do that exact same rehab for $10,000. Think about that. He's saving $15,000 per door. If you're doing that for 200 units, you just saved $3 million. That's $3 million in pure profit that stays with the partners and the family instead of going to a middleman. It's that willingness to understand the dirty work of construction and maintenance that allows him to see profits where other investors only see expenses. Ayal says it's better to own 10% of a massive, high-quality deal than 100% of a small, risky one. Which would you prefer? Would you rather be the sole boss of a small building or a partner in a massive empire? Tell us why in the comments. If you ask Ayal what the #1 requirement for success is, he's not going to say a math degree or rich parents. He's going to tell you that you need fire in the belly. He's pretty blunt about it. He thinks a lot of people today are a bit lazy, or maybe they just weren't taught how to grind. He says there is gold in the street, but most people are too busy looking at their phones to bend over and pick it up. To get to the $400 million level, you have to be willing to go the extra mile, way past the 9 to 5. He shares this crazy detail. He's put down $500,000, sometimes even $1 million, of non-refundable cash just to secure a deal. Think about the guts that takes. If the deal falls through, that money is gone forever. But he doesn't do it blindly. He does it because he has the confidence that comes from years of boots-on-the-ground experience. He knows that if you want to win big, you have to be willing to put something on the line. You can't play it safe and expect to reach the next level. It's that combination of extreme caution in the numbers and extreme courage in the execution that makes the difference. In a world full of get-rich-quick schemes and people looking for a shortcut, Ayal says your most valuable asset isn't your bank balance, it's your name. He tells this amazing story about receiving a letter from the president of Greystone, one of the biggest banks in the country. During the chaos of the COVID pandemic, when everyone was panicking and skipping payments, Ayal paid every single cent, month in and month out. He never missed a beat. Because of that, the big banks love him. They trust him. He says that you can lose money and make it back, but if you lose your reputation, you're finished. He's very careful about who he partners with because he's seen people lose everything by hanging around the wrong crowd. He even admits he's lost money before by partnering with bad people. That's why he's so picky now. He wants real people who care about their word more than a quick buck. Building a good name takes 25 years, but you can destroy it in 25 seconds. If you keep your name clean, the money will eventually find you. Ayal's final advice is simple. Stop making excuses and start moving. Whether you're 36 or 57, there's always a next level to reach. He tells the story of how he doesn't even want to retire. He wants to own 20,000 units because to him, it's about the calling to give back and show others what's possible. He's not looking for BS or people who just talk a big game. He's looking for execution. He says that if you find a deal and it makes sense, don't overanalyze it until it's dead. Follow the rules, do your homework, and then have the courage to pull the trigger. There is wealth everywhere, especially in places like Florida and Texas, but it's only for the people who are willing to do the work that others won't. He started with a bag on his shoulder and no English, and he ended up with a $400 million portfolio. If he can do it by listening to talk radio and knocking on motel doors, what's stopping you? The Treasury is open. You just have to be brave enough to walk in and claim your share. This journey from 16-year-old immigrant to a $400 million real estate mogul shows that the American dream is still very much alive for those with the fire in their belly. If this story inspired you to take your business or your investments to the next level, do us a huge favor. Hit that like button so more people can discover these principles. Drop a comment below and let us know what your next level goal is for this year. And finally, share this video with that one friend who needs a kickstart to go after their dreams. Thanks for watching Solomon's Treasury, where we unlock the secrets of the world's most successful minds. We'll see you in the next one.